All right, so unit 3 review. The first thing I want to start off with is the most important piece that you're aware of. What would be our formula for any sinusoidal function? If I said that, like, what comes to your mind? Sine. Okay, that sine function is just sine, but what would be sinusoidal function formula?
That's
So it could be sine or cosine. I'll just do sine here. Yeah. B. You could do plus. I like to do minus C. Plus C this way, okay? From there, you need to know how to find all these. If you don't know how to do that, you're gonna have a hard time making more than say a 30 on the test. You gotta know how these things are found. So first, from the equation, how do you find amplitude? That would be my next question. That's from a graph. From the equation, how do you find the amplitude? Is it always exactly A? It's the absolute value of A. The amplitude is the absolute value of A. Now, from a graphical perspective, this is what y'all start to say. How can you find amplitude? Max minus min divided by 2. Good. Good. This is the most important thing. If you don't know this front page, like I said, I didn't count up all the problems, but it'd be hard to make more than a 30 if you don't know this front page. So make sure you know this front page. Okay, period. How about that one? 2 pi over, and again, this would be absolute value, just meaning we wouldn't have a negative period. Period refers to the amount of time. We wouldn't treat that as negative. Okay, what about if you were looking at a graph? A lot of times it's easy to look maximum to maximum. Does it have to be maximum to maximum? Could be minimum to minimum.
Yeah.
Could be 0 to 0, but just make sure it's the same 0 the function's doing the same thing, meaning if it's increasing, that the other 0 is also increasing, or if it's decreasing, decreasing. So on that, I don't know how to put it other than like say max to max. I'm just gonna say in quotes, max, max, or something like that. That's for graphing. Questions over what I mean when I say max to max? What type of values is period? X or Y? Is it x-axis or y-axis? X. I should have done that on the previous one. And so what about amplitude? Okay. All right. Frequency. What's the formula there? Okay, so it's the reciprocal. So it'd be the absolute value of B divided by 2 pi. The frequency, I would just find the period and then find the reciprocal rather than talking about that graph. Okay, phase shift. It's a translation inside the parentheses. So what letter would that be? C. C. And I'm going to do here a plus C. Why am I not doing a plus C?
Oh, because
when this formula is here, it says minus C. What am I doing?
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah. So you might have some problems. And it's like a teacher preference. You might go to Dr. Milanes. I'm guessing you're gonna write like this because that's just what the Cal textbook that we've used for years and stuff. But I don't know for sure because he also has taught AP Calculus BC, the second level calculus, for years. And College Board, I've seen them do a plus a lot of times. I think it's more of a teacher preference. If that's a plus there, then what would you say is the phase shift here? A negative. Just know it's the opposite. Whatever letter there. Don't just think, oh, maybe the formula is wrong. No, just do the opposite. And so this is a shift left or right, graphically speaking. Shift left or right, graphically speaking. Okay, and then finally, what about the midline? What equation? What letter do we use for that?
D.
It's the D on the outside, but we would write it in what form? Y equals D. Very good. What would this appear as on the graph?
The starting point.
Yeah, I won't say the line of symmetry because it's not doesn't perfectly reflect up and down, but it's a line that cuts the shape in half. Yeah. Line, horizontal line, good. Add that in. Horizontal line. That. That's function. In half. I'll put that in quotes too, because that's not mathematical language there. It's just kind of English language. Okay, so questions over that part. A lot of the graph is going to be application of those points.
Isn't there a formula on that line?
Oh, yeah, we could put that on there. Sorry. It's very similar to the amplitude. What can we do also? Max plus minimum divided by 2. Good. And is that x values or y values?
Y value.
That would be y values as well. I did not put x values on the C because I put left to right. But that would be changing x values. Just to stay consistent, I'll go ahead and throw that in there. So you have 2 horizontal transformations, 2 vertical transformations listed there. A and D vertical, B and C are horizontal. Okay. Now, as we go through, this is AP. I'm not going to present you with everything you're going to see in the test tomorrow, because some of it, some of y'all are in competition wanting to be the valedictorian or salutatorian, all those spots. I don't want to just give away where everybody make 100. I want you to have to think on the brain. There'll be some surprises for you, so that your abilities come out of who can think through on the fly. And plus, that's just good preparation for the AP exam. I don't know what's going to be on it. I don't get to make that test. So I'm going to work through here the main topics you need to know. I have gone through the test multiple times. I put on here all the main topics you need to know, but it might not look like the test, which means you might see the test. You might say, I have not seen this before. He did not teach that. Don't fight that excuse. You have been taught everything. It's going to look different. Okay. You just have to think through, what is it giving me? Okay, does that make sense? All right, so I'm gonna start with kind of basic and build as we go our way. I want you not to use calculator until at the very end, some point in time I put in there calculator. I'll make it really at the start of the problem. Once you see calculator, then we can start. But everything so far, I want you to do without a calculator. It says if sine theta is 5/8 and cosine is less than 0, find tangent of theta and the coordinates of the point x, y. Oh. All right, how can I do this? Well, let's start with this. Sine is what? I'm telling you the y value is 5/8. Now, what shape have we been working with in AP calculus? A circle. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw an x and a y axis because I want you to think in terms of x's and y's. But I'm also going to add a circle because that's what shape we deal with in here. Okay, so there's my circle. Now I want you to think through, where is a y value of 5/8? Which direction would you go? It was 5/8.
Be like what? Just like more than half.
Right here, I've actually heard left, I've heard right, I've heard down. So there's 4 options. I can either move up, down, left, or right. It says sine is 5/8.
It's more than half.
Sine is y, and this is positive. We need to go up 5/8. Now on a unit circle, each point is 1 unit out. That's why we call it a unit circle. So this point, for example, would be 1, 0. This point would be 0, 1. Do I need to keep going around to make sense out of this, or are we tracking? What would I put for this point? Its coordinates. -1, 0. And finally, what would be this one?
0,
Okay, so now that we have a scale, where would 5/8 be?
a little bit above the origin.
A little bit. Okay, so that's one. Okay, like half. More than half, less than half, or exactly half?
Less than
Little more than half. Because what is half of 8s?
4/8.
4/8 would be half. So a little bit more than half. Here's 5/8. So would I put the point there? The answer is no. You put it on the circle. So it's either here. That looks like half, but I want to go more than half. So maybe I want to move that just slightly. So you can tell that's more than half. We're here or there. Now, second piece of information. All of that in green, that is sine theta being 5/8. We're at that point or that point. That makes sense? This would be 5/8 on the y-axis. Now, it tells us something about cosine. What does it say about cosine?
It has to be less than 0.
Okay, now what is cosine? X. Because x is less than 0, which side of the graph do we have to be on? Left. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna scribble this out. Because this is where cosine would be greater than 0. We want cosine to be less than 0. Does that make sense? So our answer is going to be right here. Now, I'm going to, just for your good education purposes, show you how this would blend into a triangle. How it would blend into a triangle is it would be the line that connects there, which is called the radius. That would be one leg of the triangle, that would be the other leg of the triangle. This would be a right angle, and this thing in here would be called the reference angle. It would be apostrophe with a little dash. I don't know if you remember that from, it's the second lesson. That would be the reference angle. This would be the normal angle on this side, the theta they gave us. Okay, so how could I solve for tangent? Okay, I hear tangent's y over x. I totally agree. Tangent is y over x. So let's go determine what is our y value right now. Now I'm going to change it. In terms of a triangle, this is called similar triangles. The math could hold. I could say I'm going to call on this triangle the y 5. So what I did is I multiplied the y value by 8. So this radius was what length? What was it? 1. It was 1. So if I multiplied this by 8 to make it 5, what's 1 times 8? 8. This radius I'm now going to pretend is 8. You tracking with me? I'm getting rid of my fractions. Just multiplying all my values by 8. What I did is I multiplied by 8. I'm getting whole numbers here. What's the one variable I'm missing? What do we not have? We don't have our x. I know it's negative. I know it's a negative x, but I don't know what it is. Does that make sense? What's a formula that connects x's, y's, and r's? Hold on a second. Okay, so the formula, did y'all say it? What's the formula that connects, or you can think of a right triangle. What formula connects the 3 legs on a right triangle? Pythagorean. And in terms of a circle, it's the same thing. It's just x squared plus y squared equals our radius squared. Here, if you plugged in the 5/8 and the 1, you can see this is mathematically the same thing as if I multiplied everything by 8, that I can use the formula and say it's going to be x squared plus 5 squared equals 8 squared. I'm just substituting in values. Instead of having a 5/8 and a 1 there, I'm multiplying everything by 5 just to get rid of the fraction. It is how this would simplify anyways. Okay, so now let's just solve this. What is 5 squared? 25. And what is 8 squared? 64. So it'd be 64 minus 25. I'm doing algebra at the same time of simplifying. What is 64 minus 25? 39. Okay, which is equal to 39. What's the opposite of a square? So x is going to be, now when you apply a square root, it can become positive or negative. Our square root here needs to be negative. We want the negative square root of 39. Does that simplify, by the way? What can multiply to be 39? It's not high. 3 and 13. Can I take the square root of either of those numbers? No, so it stays. So my answer here, I could say that the y value is 5 divided by negative square root 39. I'll leave my answer in that form. No. What I just did there is we found x. I'm going to go ahead and circle that, even though it's not the final answer. We found x. I'm plugging it in to find tangent. Can I leave a square root in the denominator? No. What do we got to do with the square root? Okay, pause for a second. I have a question. Can we not have a negative square root? That square root's outside this. The negative is outside the square root. So it doesn't follow rule 2. That's a good thought though. That square roots have to be positive. That's talking about the inside. So square root of negative 39 would have been a problem. Negative square root of 39 is okay. So I shoot the square root up. Basically, I multiply by a funny looking 1. I'm gonna multiply by the square root of 39 over the square root of 39, and we're gonna come up with our answer. That tangent theta is gonna equal 5 square roots of 39 over negative 39. There's your answer. You don't have to leave the negative in the bottom. I like to do it because you know which variable was negative to begin with. It wasn't the y, it was the x.
Can you run that, like from the triangle?
How did I get the triangle?
No, like how do you go from the triangle to the?
Pythagorean theorem. So, Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. What you can use with trig, I think it's just easier, instead of using a, b, and c, use x, y, and r. Or x, y, and h, if you want to think of it as a hypotenuse instead of a radius, instead of a circle. And so, we should plug the values. We did not have x, we knew it had to be negative.
I think if you answer that, is it from 5/8?
5/8, yep. I basically, law of similar triangles, that you can multiply all the sides, and this triangle still, math will all work the same, as long as you multiply all the sides. So right at the start, our radius was 1, which is a unit circle. But the beauty of a unit circle is that if you need to get rid of fractions, whatever, you can just multiply by the denominator and they all go away. So it was 5/8, I multiplied by 8 to make it be this be a 5. So the radius was 1. What's 1 times 8? 8. It became an 8, and mathematically the rest worked out.
Right.
If I did not do that, we still would have got the same answer. We just would have had to reduce over here. We would have still got the same answer. Here, I'm gonna reload and do this again. Same problem. Say same problem. Same concept. New problem. So its tangent is 3/7. What is tangent? Okay, I want you to think about this now. I want to kind of switch gears. So, sine is what letter? Y. Cosines x. And you said it. Tangent is y over x. Y over x is like slope. There's only 2 quadrants that we could have a potential answer here. Tangent's like slope because it's y over x. Y over x is rise over run, which is slope. To have a positive slope, we have to have a line something like this. Does that make sense? That has a positive slope. This has a positive slope. We have to be in one of those 2 quadrants. My value will not be in either of these 2 quadrants because what kind of slope would that have? Negative. This would be a negative y over a positive x or a positive y over a negative. So I can't have it be in the quadrant 2 or in quadrant 4. I'm going to be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3 on this one. I have to be because tangent, sine is y. You would look at y values. Remember how at the start in this problem we looked up top because sine was y? This one is tangent, which tangent is slope. I have to have a positive slope going through the origin. I have to have a positive slope. So it's either in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Okay, it says sine is less than 0. What is that telling us?
That sine is negative.
That what is negative?
Y.
That y is less than 0. So we're not going to be up here because that's where sine is greater than 0. We are going to be down here because that's where sine is less than 0, or y is less than 0. So what's the only quadrant that we can have a positive tangent? Quadrant 3. So that's going to be y3 x7. So it's going to be like a line like this. That's a slope. That right there has a slope of 3 divided by 7. Up 3/7. Makes sense how we've gone so far? Our answer has to be on the quadrant 3. Has to be quadrant 3. So just like last problem, I'm going to just draw a triangle. I think I can fit everything in about from here. So I'm going to draw a triangle like this. It's always a right triangle. What can you tell me about values I could plug into this triangle? By the way, this would be the original theta they gave us. This would be a theta with an apostrophe, which means a reference angle. What values do we know? We know the y value. What's the y value? Not 0. 3. Y equals 1 negative 3. Why is it negative? Yeah. Okay. What else could you tell me? X is because we're going left. Find. Oh my goodness, typo. Let's find We already know tangent. What, we need to find the cosine. All right, what's cosine ratio? X over R. By the way, R, the radius and hypotenuse is the same thing. So do we know our radius right now?
No.
No. So how can I find my radius?
Y squared plus y x squared.
Pythagorean theorem, which for my class, I'm not gonna say a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Teachers and students, please find this final interruption for the next few minutes. If you had a
Okay, so we're gonna plug in our numbers and work this out. This is non-calculator, which is good because, and if you weren't, you need to put the negatives in parentheses. So it's gonna be -7 squared. The reason why is because calculator, math is its own language, and math follows PEMDAS. That's the order. So like English, if you were gonna read English, you go left to right. If you're gonna read Spanish, you go left to right. Math doesn't go left to right. Math goes PEMDAS, which means it does the parentheses first. You need to make sure you put a parentheses if you were ever using a calculator with negatives, because it'll treat negative as a multiplication and it'll do the power first. So it would square 7, get 49, then make it negative, which would be wrong. I need to put that in parentheses if you're using calculator, but this, like I said, let's do it as if it's not calculator. What is -7 times -7?
Positive 49.
Positive 49. -3 times -3. Positive 9. You add those together, we get 58. So what is R gonna be equal to?
The square root of 58.
Now here's the deal, R, or if you're doing triangles, is always positive. R or H in a triangle is always positive. X can be negative, Y can be negative, R cannot be negative. So we have a square root of 58. Let's think, can we reduce that? What numbers can go into 58? 2 times
29.
29, okay? 2 can't be simplified. Square root of 2 cannot be simplified. Can square root of 29 be simplified? Anything go into 29? 13 will go into 26. It doesn't reduce. So again, that's our R. We're supposed to find cosine. What is cosine's ratio? X over R. So what does that mean for us?
You're gonna do 49.
What's our X with -7 over square root 58? Can I leave it that way? We shoot it up. So when you shoot it up, what do we get? Yeah, leave that there.
58.
-7 square root 58, all divided by 58. And 7 doesn't go in 58, so I can't simplify that either. That would be my value there. Let me sneak in a theta there. That's not theta. Okay. Questions over that? So sine is what letter?
Y.
Y. So they either use the first 2 quadrants or
Bottom
the bottom 2 quadrants. Cosine what letter?
X.
X. You either use the right side or you use the left side based off positive and negatives. Tangent is like
Well,
slope. Slope, which means it's diagonal. You'll either have a positive slope or a negative slope, and those would be the quadrants you hear. You need to know, you need to think through that on the test, okay? So again, I didn't show you how every problem is gonna be tested, but you need to know those concepts. Does that make sense? Sine is what letter?
Y.
Y. Cos is X. Tangent is Y over X, which we could kind of think of as being slope. All right, we good with that concept? Want to switch gears? Different presentation. Find the point X comma Y on the unit circle that corresponds to the real number T equals 22 pi over 3. If it says on the unit circle, that's telling you something important. What's it telling you if you have a unit circle? The radius is 1, which means if I put this over 1 and this over 1, which doesn't change the problem, I have X over R, comma Y over R. I have X over R, comma Y over R, which means what's X over R the same thing as?
Oh, cosine.
Cosine. I have cosine, comma sine. I have that because it's a unit circle. It says find cosine of 22 pi over 3, sine 22 pi over 3. Excuse me, it doesn't say that. That's what we have to do. We need to find cosine of 22 pi over 3, comma sine 22 pi over 3. Are you tracking with what we have to do there?
Yeah.
How did I get from 22 pi over 3 when it's saying x and y to cosine 22 pi sine? Because cos is what letter? X, sine is y. Same concepts over and over, but different practice. All right, pick your left hand. Looking at your left hand. Which finger would be our pi over 3 finger? By the way, you will not have a unit circle in front of you. Okay, because thumb starts at 2. If you want to think of it that way, it's 2, 3, 4, 6, and then no denominator. Denominator 1. If you want to think of it that way. Okay, so which one's our pi over 3 finger? So extend it, flip it. It's always y over x. Like so. Leave space because we might have to put some negatives in a second. I got square root of 3 for the y's. I got square root of 1 for the x's. When you do cosine and sine, what are they always divided by? Okay, now we have to figure out, do we have negatives? So 22 pi over 3. Here's the easiest way to think of it. The even pi's are over here. Even pi's. What do I mean? Even pi's. The odd pi's are over here. Now you might be going, what is he talking about? When we start in a unit circle, we say this is 0. This is 1 pi. Oops. That's 1 pi. If you went all the way around, we'd say that is 2 pi. If you start going around again, when you get back to where 1 pi is, now it's 3 pi. Go around 4 pi. 5 pi on the left, 6 pi on the right, and so on. You see what I'm saying? Even pi's are on the right side, odd pi's are on the left. Now, let's start with 22 over 3. That's closest to what whole number? What is it closest to? How many whole pi's is it closest to? It's closest to 7. 7 pi's would be 21 pi over 3. You see how it's closest to 7 pi? Let me go ahead and put that note there. That's closest to 7 pi. So that's on the left side. Now, is it a little less than or a little more than 7 pi?
A little more.
So when we come around, we're going to end in this quadrant because it's a little bit more than 7 pi. A little bit more than an odd pi. Does that make sense? 22 is a little bit more than. So tell me about the x's there. X's are negative. What can you tell me? Negative x. What can you tell me about the y? They're also negative. Now, can I simplify either one of those terms?
Yeah.
Negative 1/2, negative square root 3 over 2. There it is. Questions over that one? Okay. We'll work this a second time. Anthony, Chris, are y'all with me here or what y'all looking at? All right, I got a second one just like this. Let's roll up, do it again. Okay, see if you can talk me through it here. What's the first like real key piece of information that they give you? Just that's disguised. What's the first disguised piece of information? On the unit circle. What's it telling you if it says on the unit circle? Radius is 1. Well, dividing by 1 doesn't change the problem. So if I divide by 1, I'm dividing by the radius. What's the same thing as x divided by r, y over r? They're saying find the cosine and find the sine. That's how I get my point. If it says find that point, x comma y, they mean find cosine comma sine. That corresponds to the real number 41 pi over 4. So we need to find cosine of 41 pi over 4 and sine 41 pi over 4. I'm going to give you a second. I'll pause the video here. I'm going to give you a second. Each one of you try to figure this out on your own, and then I'm going to pick it back up with you. Just so give you a few seconds to try to do this without me telling you how to do it. All right. So now, which finger did you use? Which one's your pi over 4 finger? Middle finger. Bend your middle finger. Flip your hand over. 2 for both x and for y. For sine and cosine, what do you always divide by? 2, okay? Now, let's figure out negatives. 41 pi over 4 is closest to what whole number of pi's? Closest to 10 pi. A little bit more, a little bit less? A little bit more. A little bit more. So if you think through a graph, where is the even pi's?
On the right.
They're over here. These are the even. So if you're a little bit more than 10 pi, you're a little bit more than the even pi. What can you tell me about my x's and y's?
They're both positive.
They're both positive. We have a positive x. And we have a positive y. So my answer is good. I don't have to do anything to it. I don't have to simplify because it is simplified, square root 2 over 2. And they're both positive. Questions over that topic before I leave it behind. So I kind of introduced you to a few new things there. One, is it always going to say sine and cosine?
Nope.
So on the first two problems, I just laid it out there. Tangent, sine, I just threw them out there. And by the way, your test is over sine and cosine. Tangent might appear, you're supposed to be on all the ratios at this stage, but nothing more than that. I did try to teach you the ratios on lesson 3-2. So, and 3-3 as well. So you need to know the tangent. Other than that, you don't have to know much about tangent. It's mostly sine and cosine. When we went on to problem number 3, I want to point out to you that it won't always say sine and cosine, but you should be able to determine it's sine and cosine because they use key language like unit circle, things like that. Questions over that? All right. Without having a problem over it, just going to throw it out there. Could I still do the same math if it told me it wasn't a unit circle? If they told me it was a circle with a radius of 5? I still do it. Yes. The only thing that would happen differently is instead of dividing by 1, I'm now dividing by 5.
Teachers and students starting intervention. The seniors, it is time to go to the mail gym for your panoramic picture. Please remember you must have your senior.
All right, I already forgot what I was saying. Oh, if you were divided by 5, all you would do is you would multiply everything by 5. The way to get around it is you multiply everything by 5, or you would just your answer would just be multiplied by 5 at the very end. That's the only thing you do different if it wasn't a unit circle 1. All right, let's totally switch gears. Now, given f of 1 equals 6 and f of 4 equals -2, find the value of the period P. All right. What do they tell us? What does it mean if they say f1 equals 6?
Yeah, so at x1, your y value is 6.
Okay, so this point, they're telling you that point is perfectly on that coordinate grid. That's 1, 6, okay? And okay, so what can we determine? Can we determine the period from this? So, what's the formula for period? 2 pi over b. That's going to be our formula for period. Okay, so what's my period? Is it do I look at x's or y's?
It doesn't matter, just the order to max points.
Oh, it does matter.
Oh, we don't know.
So which ones do we look at? The x's or the y's?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh,
You need to look at x's. Okay, so can I use the points they've given me?
no.
Technically I can, but it's not the way we'd like to use them. Is that showing you one whole period?
No.
No. How much of a period is it showing me? Showing me half of a period. So if it's 1 to 6, oh, excuse me, x value 1 to 4 is half a period. Half a period is 3 units. How am I getting that? From 1 to 4 here. This is half a period. How many units is it? 3 units. What does one whole period equal?
6.
So we're gonna set this equal to 6. You got that? How that just worked there? Okay, so how would I solve that? Oh, yeah. Cross multiply, divide. So we have b times 6. 6b. That's cross multiplying there. Equals 2 pi. So that was cross multiplying. Now we
Divide by 6.
divide by 6. That can reduce to become 1 pi over 3. That's our period. We're going to call this, instead of b, we're going to call it, for the sake of this problem, period. No, 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 no. What am I doing? That is B, but that's not what we were supposed to find. I did the wrong thing here. We're supposed to find the period. What's the period?
Well, we found it.
We already found it. What was it?
Six.
6. I gotta read the instructions better. Sorry. The period is 6. That is our B, by the way. We got that right. But our period is 6. Gotta pay attention to what we're supposed to find there. Okay. B, what we found there, B is not the period. We didn't have to do that. Yeah, this is a whoops, not thinking. This was doing math before you're thinking. That right there, that B is not the period. So was that required? No, not for this problem. B is not the period. It's a value in the equation, but it's not the period. So what was our period? 6. That's our true answer. That's our period right there.
Well, you managed to find the D.
Okay, now let's move on to part B. I got a part B and a part C, I believe. in
Oh,
this.
God.
So label where the function is concave up and concave down on the intervals 0 to 15. So we need to keep going, don't we? All right, so where will this maximum occur next?
7. X7.
How'd you get to 7?
Because if half the period is 3, then period is 6.
So we add 6 to the x. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. Y'all agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, and so if I add 6 more,
That would be the other.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, this would be a period. 13 comma 6. Okay, now let's go with this point here. Where's that point?
0, 4.
Okay, so if I go 6 over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why am I going 6 again?
That's not a period.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't make it any more further. Okay, and how about the minimum? That minimum, you may slide up. That was what, 4?
10.
Negative 2. So we go to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. 10, negative 2. All right, we ready to connect some dots?
Yeah.
I should probably, what would be the midline on this? What's the formula again for midline?
Max plus min divided by 2.
Oh my goodness, I'm looking at this equation. I did not, I got a typo here
What
as
did
well.
we do?
I said 1, 6. That is not 1, 6. What point is that? No, that's 1, 6.
It's what's, are you okay, sir?
No, I'm not.
Good to know.
Okay, that is, I don't know what's going on in my mind. Okay, sorry. Midline, what would be our midline here? We go as high as 6, as low as negative 2. What's the formula for midline?
Max plus min divided by 2.
Okay, what's 6 plus negative 2? 4. You divide by 2. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. Want to have midline here? At 2. Here's my midline. All right, so let's yep, y equals, I should write that, y equals 2. So we go to graph this. Let's pick it up from here. We go through there. Through there. Through there.
It says go to 15.
So where would 15 be? Let's see. 6 from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Off the paper. Okay, how about this one? 1, 2. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Somewhere in there. Still not there. And this would be at 16. Oh, right there. Okay, so we're looking at something like that. We're looking at, what did it say? What was the question? Concave up, concave down? Is that what it said?
Determine the interval that are concave between the points 0 and
Concave up, concave down. All right. Above the midline. What's happening every time you're above the midline?
concave down.
It's concave down. What's happening up below the midline?
Concave up.
Concave up. Good. We're concave up above. No, I said that wrong. Concave down when above the midline. We are concave up when below the midline. Hey, what does it mean if you're concave up? But what does that practically mean? Increasing our here in X's and Y's, we're not quite there yet. Increasing, decreasing means you have either increasing Y's or decreasing Y's. This concave up and down is a little bit different. You're increasing your slope. What's another name for slope? Because this, it doesn't have a slope technically because it's curved. A rock, or our average rate of change is increasing. When you're concave up, your IA rock, which would represent the slope, is constantly increasing. It doesn't mean it's always positive, but it does mean it's increasing. We're constantly starting to turn up our A rock. Once you're concave down, the quote slope is starting to decrease. That's what it means. So we are concave up from where to where on this function? I'm sorry, I said up again. Concave down. Let's start at 0 until where? Approximately. Where would you guess? About 2.5 for brevity. We'll just say 2.5. On the test, it won't be brevity. You need to know exactly where it is. It'll be good numbers. Let's just say 2.5. Is that the only places? By the way, I should have done parentheses. It's not domain, it's not range. So do a union. Where do we go concave down again? From 5.5 until 5.5 until about 8.5. Union, got another one. 11.5 to, and it should make sense because these are half a period is 3 units. So 11.5 until 14.5. Makes sense? That's concave down. And we can do concave up. At the same time, I'm just gonna stop there. The concave up intervals will be exactly what's not included in concave down. If it's not concave down on sinusoidal, guess what it is? Concave up. Hey, what do you call those midline points? It's not actually zeros because we're shifted up. What do we call them? Points of inflection. Very good. Those are all points of inflection. Which means you're switching from concave up to concave down. Go ahead. All right, I told you I have part C on this. Are we there yet? No, we're not. It says it is known that f of x plus np equals f of 1. What in the world are we saying? We found p earlier. P was our period. What was our period earlier? 6. I'm going to substitute. Here's what we know. It is known that f of x plus 6n equals f of 1. That's what it's saying. It is known that that is true. That just means, what was our y value at f of 1? 6. That we could get 6 again somewhere on here by multiplying 6 times n. It says, what is the orders pair on the graph of f when n equals 4? So now what am I doing? I'm plugging in 4 there. And what is x?
1.
X is 1. So let's plug in f of 1 plus 6 times 4. What is 6 times 4? 24. Add 1. We want to know what is f of 25. Well, we should know. F of 25 is going to equal 6. How did I get 6? Because it's a periodic function. Did we know f of 1? Since f of 1 was 6, any multiple of 6. I mean, anytime you add 6 to that, you should 6 to the x.
25 times 6.
So Not 25 times 6, sorry. For the x value, every 6 units on the x-axis should repeat. It's a coincidence that I chose this one with f of 6. Here, I can do it again. Do you remember how we had f of 4 equal -2? Since we had f of 4 equal -2, what would not f of 10, not f of 16, how about f of 22? I just skipped forward a little bit. What would f of 22 equal? Someone say -2. We're still not hearing very many people. Someone say -2. You're right, you're right. Why would f of 22 equal -2 as well? Because what's the period of this function? It was p. What was p? What was p? 6. So over here, if I took 4, my x value 4, and I added a period to it, what's 4 plus 6? 10. At f of 10, we get -2. Well, then I add another period to it. What's another period f of 10? F of 16, which would be -2 as well. If I add another period to that, what do I get? F of 22, which is, I got another one. This one's gonna be really tricky. What's f of 28 gonna equal?
Oh my god, it's so
It's gonna be
hard.
the same thing,
It's gonna be -2. Why?
because every time you add the period to the previous x, you just get the same.
You get, every time you add a period, what happens to y?
Doesn't-
It's the same, because I'm adding a period, I'm at the same spot. So what if I want to get really, really tricky, and I said f of 34? Still -2, why?
Because the y don't.
I'm still adding just 6 at a time. Okay, let's come back over here. What if I ask you for f of 31? F of 31 would be 6, because that is 6 more than 25, which was 24 more, a factor of 6 more than f of 1. Does that make sense how that works?
Yeah.
Okay, up here, this is just the symbol, that right here was the definition of a period that was less than 3-1. 3-1, that's where that came from. All right. I'm gonna let you try. All right, so here it says, find the ratios of sine, cosine, tangent. So what is sine's ratio? Sine is what? Y over R. What is our R in this problem? 9. That's the only thing they give us. They don't give us anything else. So sine is Y over R. What can you tell me about the Y here?
Y is.
Negative. Do we know anything else? No. So -9 divided by negative Y divided by 9. Radius is always positive, by the way. That's 9. You can't do anything else with it. Nothing else in this problem. Okay, tell me about the cosine.
It'd just be negative x divided by. Negative x? Yeah,
Divided by,
and then you just have negative y. divided by negative
okay,
x.
and then finally tangent.
It's just y over x.
Tangent is going to be
Negative.
Y
That's
positive.
it? Because 2 negatives cancel out.
Yeah, that's right. And now watch this. I'm gonna take this point on the circle. I'm gonna draw it to the origin as a line. What can you tell me about that slope? It's positive. That's why tangent is positive, because it has a tangent is like slope, it has a positive slope. This slope is y divided by x. Negative y divided by negative x, the same thing as y divided by x, which is tangent. Hey, remember how earlier I said if your circle was bigger than 1? This is a circle bigger than 1. I don't know if you remember when we, a couple problems ago saying this. Let's think through this. If you were needing to isolate the x here, let's say we're isolating x, what would you do? Multiply by 9. Remember how earlier on that problem I said if you have a radius bigger than 1, all you have to do is multiply by it? That's because to isolate the x here, you would multiply by 9. How would you isolate your y? You multiply by 9. Now granted, you would have to then divide by -1 because it's a negative. Right now it's negative y. If you want to isolate it to get your negative on the value as opposed to on the variable y. All right, let's move on. 7 here. Write an equation that passes to the point 1, 2, has a vertical dilation by factor 1/3, a midline at y equals 2, and a period of 8 units. All right, let's start with what you think you can do the easiest first. We're writing an equation. What's the formula for, or what's our equation?
Y equals A, close your sign, and bracket B.
So we have y equals a sine bx plus c minus c, whichever one you want to use, plus d. All right, Ivan, do you have any of those variables a, b, c, or d that you could say with confidence? Hey,
We have B. B is.
all right, Rayo, I'll let you go first. What do you say the d is?
It says midnight at Y equals to B equals to.
Our d is 2. Good. All right, Ivan, do you see anything that you could identify? What'd you say? 8 is b. It's close, but it's not quite right.
What you say you put 2 pi over B.
2 pi divided by b equals 8. All right, how do we solve that?
8B is equal to 2 pi.
Cross multiply and divide. Ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to have 8b equals 2 pi.
Pi over 1.
You'll have 8b, when you cross multiply there, equals 2 pi, and then you will divide by 8. And so what does b actually equal? Pi over 4. All right, we're doing great.
We have A.
You have a. What is a?
1/3.
How do you get 1/3?
Equal to vertical dilation.
Vertical dilation
That
means
means it's outside.
to multiply,
Yeah.
which is the place of a. And so we are multiplying by 1/3. That's our a. There's only one variable we're missing.
C.
C. All right. So as we start to graph this, this is what type of function we don't know yet, do we? So let's say this. We know that there is a midline at y equals 2. And we know it passes through the point
1 comma.
1 comma
Oh, it's close.
2. It's multiplied by 1/3. What does that mean? It's gonna go up a little bit and down a little. It's only gonna go up 1/3, down 1/3. So what I would do, since we don't know where it hits, the easiest one is I'm just gonna make this a sine function like this, because it satisfies. Like that. So if it's a sine function, tell me, which way has it been shifted? One which way? So this has been shifted right 1 unit. Therefore, what is C if it's been shifted right 1 unit? -1. So our equation would look like y equals 1/3 sine
Bracket
b is
pi over 4.
pi over 4
Or this is X minus 1. Plus 2.
plus 2. There's your equation. Could you have still got the same answer or gotten a correct answer using cosine? Yes. How much angle apart is a sine and a cosine? It's a co-function.
Period.
It's which is not a period.
Half a period.
I hear 90 degrees. We don't deal with degree. You're correct, but you need to convert it. It's pi over 2. So pi over 2, if you think about it, pi is 3.14 divided by 2, you get about 1.57. So it's 1.7 added to this. So basically, it could be a cosine, but now it becomes a plus 0.57. Is roughly what it does. Sine was easier, but it's like a cosine plus, meaning if you came back this way, you see how this would, if I kept drawing it, how it would go like that. It's then plus, meaning shifted left, 0.57. That's where, does that make sense how I got that math? How'd I get there again? What's the difference between sine and cosine? It's pi over 2, that's co-function. So it's supposed to be sine x plus pi over 2. But this, you take away that 1, and that's where I would get the 0.57 plus 0.57. That's where I got that from. But I just use sine. I'll give you credit either way. It'll be really easy. I'll give you credit either way on the test. All right, let's try again. Let's try another one. Write an equation for g of x that passes through the origin. You want to do sine? Okay, we're going with sine. Has an amplitude of 8. That's A.
I think it's
has a midline at y equals 8.
If your frequency is 3, right? If you do the reciprocal. Frequency,
Frequency is 3. What's the formula for frequency?
B over.
The absolute value of the over 2 pi.
Yeah, and we won't worry about that for now, but you're correct. You're absolutely correct. For solving, I'll just do it like that. Okay, how do I solve that?
B is equal to 6 pi.
B equals 6 pi.
Oh.
We're ready to write our equation?
What's the same?
Okay, let's do a quick graph and check. I'm gonna draw the x-axis higher this time. We're wondering why, you'll see in a moment. The midline's at, oh. Sorry, totally backwards. I'm gonna draw my,
Y-axis a little higher.
I'm gonna draw my x-axis a little lower this time. In a moment, you'll see why. Oh, whoops. Okay, my x-axis I'm gonna draw lower. Because where's the midline? At 8. So that's y equals 8. This graph starts where? At the origin, and it has an amplitude of 8. So it's gonna go like this. Something like that. Still set on sine? This isn't a sine, this is cosine. Why is this a cosine? You see what just happened when I graphed that? I try to do it as a trick. It starts at the origin and I want you to think of sine, but when we graph the midline,
Think the coast.
sine starts at its midline. So it became a cosine. You see how it's starting at its minimum?
So that
That's a
means
cosine. Now, not only is it a cosine, it tells us something else that's wrong.
it tells us that the A is actually negative
Why is our a negative 8?
because
It starts at the minimum. So here in the equation would be y equals -8 cosine. This has no other shift, so I can do 1 parentheses. 6 pi x plus 8.
yeah.
Yeah, I tried to trick you. I want you to think through that.
So A is negative because it starts at the minimum, right?
A is negative because it starts at its minimum. Yep,
And it would be positive if it's expected.
that's right. It would have been positive if it started at 16. At 0, 16. It would have been positive 8. Right. Question over that? I think it's only 2 more, maybe it's 3 more. 3 more, all right. 3 more, let's look at. Okay, we're about to get into the calculator. What is the unreduced coordinates of the angle? Theta equals 27 pi over 7 in standard position and the radius 5 centered at the origin. Okay. Kind of alluded to this earlier. It says it wants to know the coordinates. What are coordinates? When I say coordinates, what are we wanting? X and Y. X and Y. To do this without in perfect form, what is X? What do we usually say X is?
X over R.
That's cosine. I'm gonna do a little crazy math here. So cosine, we usually say, truthfully, what is cosine? Is it just X?
No, it's X over R.
X over R, which means if I needed Xi isolated, what does X actually equal? How would I isolate that X?
X times R.
You multiply by R, and so it's R times cosine theta. Does that make sense? So without going through the work, what would the Y be? R equals sine theta. I'll go ahead and just write that for the sake of your notes. Sine theta is Y over R. How do you isolate the R, the Y? Multiply both sides by R. Same right here. Multiply both sides by R. And that's how we get that. Okay. So we have everything we need to have the coordinates. It says, what's the unreduced form? So totally unreduced. Totally unreduced. What would be my X coordinate? Well, X is R cosine. Do we know what R is? 5. Cosine, do we know what theta is? 27 pi over 7. Coincidentally, what quadrant would that be in? 27 pi over 7. What quadrant would that be in?
Let's see, 20, it's less than 4 pi.
Just less than 4 pi.
So it
It's
was
a fourth quadrant because it's not quite an even pi. It's almost there, but not quite there. So it's fourth quadrant. Okay, that would be our x quadrant. What's our y? Whoops.
So that would mean.
Okay, now, Part B, calculator, find the exact value. I want you to type these in the calculator. You need to make sure your calculator is in radian mode. What I'm gonna recommend, I'm gonna tell you tomorrow to do it, because I have regulars who use degrees all the time. I would recommend when you pick up your calculator to press home screen to menu C. That will reset it and put you in radians. Home screen to menu C. If you're not in radians, your calculator will absolutely give you the wrong answer every single time.
so you can 5 pro.
Other than 0. 0 radians and 0 degrees is the same. Other than that, every other thing will be wrong. So part B, you're now typing this in the calculator and getting that value.
I'm pressing it on.
How do you put in the cosines? Just type it in.
Press trig button on the left side of the calculator. There's a trig button.
I didn't know that. Mister, what did you say there?
Go to calculator. Oh, home screen to menu C, select OK. That will restore the calculator and put it in radian mode.
No.
So-
You did it right. You did it
Sorry. Home screen to menu C, then choose OK. Mine won't let me because it's a teacher one. But you choose that, it'll clear everything, it'll restore all settings to defaults, which is radians. It should say rad up at the top. Your calculator needs to say rad. You type each of those values in, and what do you get? 5 trig cosine 27. The pi button's on the bottom left. Pi divided by, whoops, divided by 7. And I'm going to copy that and paste it. And all I'm going to do is change the COS, and I'm going to just type in SIN, SIN, and press enter. Those are my two values. Does that look like a fourth quadrant set of values? A positive X and a negative Y?
Yep.
That would be fourth quadrant. This would be your answer to part B. Oh, net round to the nearest hundredth? Thank you.
-2.17.
Yeah.
So rounded to the nearest hundred. What are you saying X should be? 4.50 or 4.51? 4.50. If it's 4.50, we could just leave it as 4.5. We all we do 4.5 or 4.50. 50, okay. And then the Y? -2.17. There's your quadrant right there, or your coordinate right there. So I don't know if you realize this. I told you at the start, I'm not going to show you every problem, but I have basically done everything using the same pieces of information over and over. That sine is what letter? Y. Cosine is, X. Tangent is. Sometimes you need to find the ratio of X over R. Sometimes you have to isolate the X, which means you multiply by R. Sometimes you're given the cosine, you'll have to find the ratio. Sometimes you're given a ratio, you'll have to find the theta. You'll have all these different things. It's really manipulating. Sine is Y, cos is X, tangent is Y over X. Know your quadrants, know the sinusoidal function and the vocabulary attached. All right, 10, calculator. Sinusoidal regression is given by that equation. On what intervals is the function increasing, decreasing? Concave up, concave down. Okay, go ahead and graph this. I want to make sure everybody knows how to graph.
Type it in like that.
Yeah, go ahead and just type it in. I'm not going to take all the time to write the intervals.
Instead of bracket, can we just remove it and put the bracket and then the text?
So on my calculator, you just do a second set of parentheses.
Oh.
$11 sine 3 pi parentheses, and you don't use a t either because my calculator says f1 of x. So you should be using an x because that's what it says, f of x plus 4. And outside both parentheses, a plus 26. When you hit enter, you probably won't see much. Why do you think you don't see much? It's not scaled correctly. Great. All right, I press enter. Mine appears to disappear. Appears to disappear. Mine never appears. We need to change our y-axis. Let's think through this. What's the midline in this function? 26. What's the maximum going to be? What's 26 plus the amplitude of 11? 37. We need to get up to 37. Go up to the y-axis, double click that 6.67. And 37 is the maximum. I'm going to go higher than the maximum. How about 40? Because it's a good round number. Y'all cool 40?
Yeah.
Type in 40. Now do we see the function? Yeah, we do. And it seems like it's going way too fast for us to really be able to manipulate. So how about instead of going out to 10? I mean, even 5 is a ton of whole periods. How about we limit it to about 1 pi? Y'all okay with that? 1 pi is 3.14. We'll already get a couple periods in there. Click on the x-axis from 10 and put a pi symbol there. And then I will click on the negative x and I will do a negative 10, I'm sorry, on the negative x-axis, and I'll put a negative pi. I'm doing that just so we can better see and understand this function here. Menu analyze. I'm doing menu analyzing. I'm just walking through things you need to know how to do on the test. Just a reminder. If I wanted to find a maximum, I would do menu analyze, click maximum. I'm going to find 2 maximums. Menu analyze. I'm going to find another maximum. Hey guys, can you all start horsing around? Okay, I found 2 maximums. I'm going to find a couple minimums. Pardon me?
What'd you put for the, because I know you changed the x and y value.
I did pi and negative pi.
Pi and negative pi?
Yeah, and then I accidentally slid it a little bit, so my numbers are different now.
Just put pi and negative pi.
I click on that, do a pi symbol, and then a negative pi over there is what I did. So I found those. Hey, if you wanted to see the midline, that would be its own equation. What's the equation of the midline? Y equals what? Which is y equals what? 26. What you could do if you needed it, I'm just showing you tools just so you're prepared. You could press tab to get a second equation. Whoops, I'm highlighting. If I press tab to get a second equation, I could do, instead of y equals f2 equals, I could type in a 26, and now I have the midline. You see that? We might need to know where we hit that midline. I'll analyze. That would be called an intersection because I'm intersecting 2 graphs. I'm going to intersect here and there. And menu analyze graph. Intersect. I did 2 maximums. There's another one. Okay, so all of that, let me now send it over. And this will make it a little bit bigger for you to see. Here's all this information. From this picture, what can we determine? Again, I'm actually not going to follow through this whole problem. What can you tell me about concave up? Where is it concave up?
Concave up at the bottom.
This part, all of those are concave up. Where is it concave down? Above the midline. Good. Concave down. When is it decreasing? From the maximum to the minimum. Here's where it would decrease. So it decreases from max to min. So when would it increase? Min to max, which I don't have that down there. How about, I'll just do a new one. I mean, I do have some that will blend in together. Increase from min to max. Okay, when, because you know how a lot of our questions that we had leading up to this on AP Classroom would ask, when is it increasing and concave up? When is it decreasing and concave up or whatever? So what if I ask, when does it increase and concave down? Where would you be looking for increase, but yet concave down?
Increase.
Yeah, increase and concave down at the same time. What would you look for? Would you look above the midline, below the midline? Above the midline, going from the maximum towards the minimum or from the minimum towards the maximum? That's where you'd be looking. Just know how to interpret all that. So concave up occurs below the midline, concave down occurs above the midline. Increase is from minimum to maximum, decrease is from maximum to minimum. Does that kind of make sense to you, the rules on that? You don't have to have those memorized if you want to just look and observe, but just know how to do that. Cool there? By the way, the word intervals, you always list the x values. If you were writing it out, intervals are the x values. We don't care about the y. We don't care how low is it, how high is it. You just put the x values from the start to the finish. All right. Anything else I need to have this? Last question for you. It says graph the function that has a maximum of 15 at t equals 2 hours. I'm gonna pause there. What is that telling me right at that point? As far as the graph is concerned. At 2, comma, we have a max where? What's the coordinates of the max? 2, comma 15. So we go to 2, comma 15 right here. There's our maximum. And a minimum at, would the minimum be 3, comma 6? Good. 6, comma 3. 6, comma 3. There's the maximum. Label all key values. First off, could we find what our period is? Does that show me right there? Those 2 points, would that be period?
It shows you
That's half a period. Half a period is how many units? 4. So what's one whole period? 8 units. Okay, let's go ahead and put on some periods. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be a period there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, just stop right there. Okay, so those are the maximums and minimums. Oh, let's go backwards. 8 would be -2, which is right there. Okay. Are those going to be all the key values? No, we're gonna have the key value. What other key values are we missing? We have the maximums, we have the minimums. You would actually need to label the points, like what their values are, not just draw the dots. But you need the points where they intersect the midline. Where is the midline? It has a maximum of 15 and a minimum of 3. You add them, divide by 2. What's 15 plus 3? 18, divided by 2? 9. Midline's gonna be at 9. Y equals 9. And we can find the midline points by dividing, it's halving. So the max was at 2, the min was at 4. What's in between 2 and 4? I'm sorry, 2 and 6. They were 4 apart. So what's in between 2 and 6?
No, 4.
4. So 4 is the halfway point. So we hit here. And you just count 8. So if you wanted to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, wait a minute. A halfway point would come every 4. Why would it come every 4, not just every 8? Because it hits a decreasing and it hits an increasing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Let's connect our dots. What do you say? Oh, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. We know where we begin from. This is nice. Why'd you say sine?
It starts at the midline.
Starts at the midline. like that. Label all key values. So what I mean by label all key values is what, if it says label all key values, what you need to do is come over and say that is 2,15. This one would be add 8. If you add 8, what's that value gonna be? 10, 15, that's a 1 period. This one would be 18,15. This one would be, well, we don't quite get there, so I'll stop there. Okay, how about this very first one? 0, 9. This would be 4, 9. 8, 9. 12, 9. 16, 9. 29 and 24, 9. Woo. Minimums. This one was 6, 3. So then we'd have 14, 3. And finally 22, 3. Those are the key values. That's a lot of them on
Can we count the key values?
there. Sure, count them up. That if it says label all key values, that's what I mean. Label. You could put maximums here. This is minimums.
13 key values.
That's a lot of key values, isn't it? But we labeled them all. That's what you need to do. This never told us amplitude. Could we find the amplitude looking at the picture now?
Yes.
Yeah, what's the amplitude? What's from midline to the top? 9 to 15. How many to increase? 6. This is a sine. Would it be a positive sine function or a negative sine function? Positive. It's a positive 6 sine. Okay. B, if our period is 8 units, 2 pi divided by b equals 8. It's gonna be pi over 4. Do we have a shift? Left to right, I should say. Pi over 4. Do they use letter T here? They do. Starting right at X. Let me change that to a T. There's no C because he starts at his midline. The Y intercept is the midline, so it's a sign without a phase shift. What about our D? Plus sign. There's your equation if you needed it. Believe that's it. All right. I'll wrap this up. Do you have any questions for me? I feel like anything we've talked about that I did or did not talk about today that's come up? What quadrants is sine positive? Sine is positive where? 1 and 2 quadrants. All right, where's cosine positive? 1 and 4. Where's tangent positive? 1 and 3. All right, good.